and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, the Chinese lumps to a new low in 8 years. What's the reason for this downward trend, and should the country be worried? And the Thai parliament invites the crown prince to assume the throne. Will the public accept this as his support rates pales in comparison to his father, the late king? We begin our program with the recent movements in the Chinese renminbi, or the RMB. The currency hit an 8-year low last week, but China set a stronger reference rate for the yuan for a second straight day on Tuesday. That came after authorities from the central bank in China said on Sunday that the yuan will remain stable. So what will be the outlook going forward, and what impact will that have on the economy?
China's yuan has strengthened this week against the greenback after hitting an 8.5-year low last week. Its decline in value has accelerated with a sudden increase in expectations of a U.S. rate hike. Experts say the yuan will stabilize once the rate hike threat is out of the way and the market will rebalance itself.
We've bounced up against those 2008 numbers, but prior to that, you had a lot higher number. It was up at 8+ at one point, going into 2007. So I don't think that it's going to return to those numbers, but it's going to challenge itself around 7.
People's Bank of China Vice Governor Yi Gang said on Sunday that the yuan showed characteristics of a strong currency as it has fallen less than other currencies against the dollar. Emmanuel Daniel, chairman of the Asian Banker, says the yuan might play a security role for the developing countries.
While there's relative depreciation taking place in the different countries, investors will be looking for anchor currencies, and the renminbi has established itself as a very strong anchor currency, and very little happens to the renminbi that the government is not able to support. So if you're an investor, you want to short the renminbi, you'll be playing against a huge government that has the resources to hold out against it.
China is said to be contemplating more capital restrictions to prevent yuan from tumbling. Analysts predict the currency might strengthen in the short term, but continue to depreciate in the medium term as the greenback's rally continues.
To discuss this about China's RMB in Beijing, we have Mr. Zhao Zhongxiu, Vice President of the University of International Business and Economics, with us. In New York, Max Wolf, Professor of Economics from the New School University. In London, we have Simon French, Chief Economist at Panmure Gordon. Welcome to our program, the three of you gentlemen. First of all, may I begin by asking you, Professor Zhao here in Beijing, what do you make of the remarks given by the Vice Governor of the People's Bank of China, Mr. Yi Gang, over the weekend about the RMB? Is it likely a message that China might intervene in the foreign exchange rate?
Well, actually, I don't think the government will be intervenes this adversely, since actually the currency just stick is I think it's equivalent the price and adjust to the internal and external the changes like election in the States and also in China. That's the economy, this the PPI and the inflation and also the profit of the enterprises. That's reflect in the market, and I think for the currency, that's the stable with the basket of currency. They just adjust to the whole world change.
So my question to you really is, Professor, is China's central bank going to intervene?
I don't think this will intervene and adversely, and but I think China's mechanism that will be they'll monitor this trend.
All right, let me go to Mr. French. What do you think, sir, of the downward trend of the RMB over the past few months? So what do you think are the reasons behind it?
Yeah, so I think there are two sides to this story. There's the dollar strength story, and you mentioned in your introduction the fact that a December increase from the Federal Reserve is now fully priced into the market, and we've seen a strong dollar, both on anticipation on that and anticipation of higher growth in the US. But then domestically in China, I think there's been a conscious decision to weaken the yuan to benefit Chinese exporters, and also a very rational reaction from Chinese corporates, Chinese households to diversify their holdings out of yuan into other currencies, which is consistent with the move towards internationalization of both the currency markets and capital markets.
Is it a conscious decision?
Yeah.
Is it a conscious decision?
I believe it is a conscious decision.
Let me ask the Professor Zhao here in Beijing to respond to what you have just said. Is it
Yeah, that's
a conscious decision to depreciate? Is that what you're saying?
no.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Professor Wolf in New York. Sir, some specific numbers Chinese economists argue are suggesting different directions of the RMB in the near future. PPI going up, industrial enterprises, their sales coming up, and meanwhile, people have also been suggesting the ability of enterprises to pay back the interest of the loans that they borrow. Will these realities, factors of the real Chinese economy, be able to in any way impact on the exchange rate?
Sure. So great to be here. Look, I think in the longer term, the exchange rate should be set by the conditions both internal to China and China's position in terms of their conditions relative to other national economies. Since 1971, we don't see currencies moving around based on gold. We broke the gold standard. So it's the full faith and credit of the government that issues that currency. That bodes well for China. In the short term, I don't think the renminbi is trading much on China news the last 3 weeks. I don't think most currencies are. I think what we're seeing is a U.S.-led, Western-led effort to price the best possible case scenario with all things you like being successful of a new and all things you don't like never happening. And one of the things that's doing is pushing up the U.S. dollar and pushing down developing country currencies, and particularly pushing down forecasts for major exporters on the notion that we're going to have a America first Trump presidency with a less free trade environment, and we're also going to have rapid sustained growth in the United States. Ironically, the outperformance of the U.S. is actually a bit undermined by the cheapening currencies, but I think the Chinese currency story short term might continue to be U.S. policy, but long term it will and it must be the robustness and the growth, which is still an essential piece of the story in China.
All right, let's talk about the short term first, if developing on your theory, Professor Wolf. Professor Zhao, shall we address that question to you? Because Mr. Trump, the presidential-elect in the U.S., during his campaign, talked about China as a currency manipulator. That is a big accusation, by the way. Of course, when he's coming into the power, we see a very different Mr. Trump, including the selection of his key cabinet members. We see Commerce Secretary and many others who are big gurus from the Wall Street. Very different from his nationalist rhetorics earlier. So let me ask you, to what extent is China's policymakers, are China's policymakers concerned about the pressures coming from the United States, political-wise, when it comes to China's own currency rates?
I don't think the Trump will be trigger the trade war when he is sworn in, but we cannot change the manufacturing structure overnight. So that means the relationship, the trade relationship between China and the U.S. will be, I think it's sustainable, but will be some change. But it will not change overnight. So I don't think there will be the tariff on China, and also force China to appreciate the currency, since they say they're trying to manipulate our currency. So I think we still have a time, and actually there is a very communications channels between China and the U.S. as the government level, and even other channels to discuss and the cooperation from China and U.S.
So in one word, if I could sum up what you have just said, is that there is no immediate danger that China will be under great pressure politically from the United States, even with the new president coming into the power. And by the way, the trade structures between the two countries are not likely to change overnight. Therefore, it will remain what it is, and we'll still try to figure out how to work between these two countries. Let me come to you, Mr. French. From your perspective, how much of the exchange rate regimes will be influenced so much politically during a Trump era, and particularly between China and the United States, and China, and U.S. and some of the other major economies of the world?
Yeah, I think I'd associate myself with Professor Wolf's comments around where currently markets and the exchange rate are pricing the idea that all of the good stuff that capital markets like around the Trump economic agenda are going to be implemented, and all of the bad stuff, the challenges to globalization, the labeling of China as a currency manipulator, is not going to happen. I think that's at best wishful thinking, and at worst quite dangerous. I think some of the appointments that we've seen to the Trump administration suggest that some of the rhetoric during the campaign is going to be followed through with appointments, but I think Mr. Trump will get very quickly an understanding that he cannot influence economic conditions around the world, and actually, since he has become president-elect, the strengthening of the dollar has made it harder for US imports, and actually the yuan hasn't weakened nearly as strongly as other major currencies. Actually, the sterling is probably one of the only other major currencies that has held up well against the dollar. Pretty much everyone else, including the yen, has actually devalued by much more.
That, of course, is the relations between the RMB and the dollar, China, United States, how much it will play in terms of China's exchange rate. But what about in other cases, Professor Wolf? At this moment, we got the news coming from SWIFT. They have a RMB tracker, and that has been suggesting the use in international trade of RMB has been declining over the past 2 years, since 2014, now to about 1.67% of the overall international trade. So what does that say about the attractiveness of the RMB, and also exactly the opposite direction, it seems, of the expectations after China's RMB joined the IMF special drawing right basket?
Yeah, so I think that what we're seeing here is that short term looks like it's heading in a different direction than we think the secular long-term trend is. I also think that the role of the Chinese wealth in the global economy is poorly proxied by the use of the RMB. One little example being just historically Bitcoin, the sort of new crypto digital currency. My understanding is the vast preponderance of its international use is originating in China, and so that's probably monies that might be in the RMB if it weren't for some changes to the system here. So we would expect that to rise. We would also expect the prominence of China diplomatically, politically, possibly even militarily inside East Asia to rise. One thing that the markets haven't factored yet and the currencies don't reflect is part of what the Trump administration promises at least have been, and some of the appointments suggest some validity too, is this notion that the United States is going to withdraw more and be less internationally minded, and that will leave a freer space to rising powers, and there is no more rising power on earth than China. So we would expect that to catch up, more or less. The diplomatic power and the currency usage around China may begin to catch up with its huge status as a global powerhouse. And you might look at about decline RMB might be a little bit about commodity prices as well.
Before we try to figure out what other countries might do to their own policies, for example, the United States, because China cannot dominate that anyway, let's try to figure out what China's own policy could do in terms of the RMB exchange rate and the popularity of the RMB. Mr. French, Belt and Road Initiative is one that has brought up by China, building infrastructures around the world. Of course, RMB in terms of trade and also infrastructure building very much encouraged during this process. But how much will it mean for the RMB exchange rate right now? As we know, these initiatives could be long-term rather than short-term.
Yeah, I think you're right to bring up the One Belt, One Road initiative as an important juncture on the internationalization of the yuan around the world, and actually very much China's response to what was, I think, unambiguously a slowing economy at the back end of 2015 was the infrastructure spending program, both in the short term and on longer term programs. And actually the rest of the world, developed world, is playing catch up with what China has done on the fiscal side of things to support its its economy. And actually, this embeds the trading infrastructures around Asia and over into Europe, which I think will only benefit. And actually, the long-term usage of the yuan, and as it moves towards reserve currency status, is very much in the trajectory of that One Belt, One Road initiative.
Professor Zhao, what do you think?
Well, the renminbi, we have achieved the milestone we entered into a special general rise, but the long way to go. Actually, on one hand, China, we need to improve the infrastructure for RMB internationalization, especially the SIPs, for the cross-border interbank, settlement with this system. That's just the first stage, and then we should upgrade this. And on the other hand, we use the RMB for the long-term investment, and especially for One Belt, One Road investment. That should be maybe currently we will still use US dollar and other currency. So that will be swapped to this, and extend this project to some the partners in the Belt Road, and especially for some of the developing economies. So that's will change the anchor of that.
Well,
yes.
will it though, Professor Wolf? Because the U.S. is also talking about the infrastructure building with the Trump administration coming into the office, but how much that will be done, where the money come from, all are unknown. Is there any chance of cooperating? If there were, would that mean a new possibility in terms of the use of the RMB and the US dollar?
Yeah, so I think we could see cooperation, not just between the United States and China, but also between China and the European Union, and China and other emerging states in East Asia might also make a lot of sense. I think part of what we're seeing right now is in the short term, we've had a very sharp strengthening in the dollar. That makes everybody less interested in holding other currencies that have fared less well, and that creates at least some risk around the world that there are more capital controls coming in for people to variably control the movements in their currency a little better. This is not so much the case in China, but there's also a feel globally that there's going to be a bit of a rush to high quality assets because the world looks a little bit more unstable and trade looks a little bit more impacted by various nationalisms, particularly but not exclusively in the West. And so I think you're seeing a little bit of a reshift around. I think when that settles out, we'll go back to a general stance, which is quite constructive for the RMB. It's also true the RMB could pick up some market share globally because we do anticipate further troubles in Europe as the future of the EU gets sorted out by a series of referendum and elections beginning in a few days and really lasting for the next year.
Right. The RMB was included in the International Monetary Fund special drawing rights basket last month. That is being considered, in China at least, a milestone for the internationalization of the yuan. Right now, more than 100 countries are now using the RMB for payments with Chinese mainland and Hong Kong. Among them, 57 countries use it more than 10% of their credit payments by the value. And also we see the RMB stands ever more active in the currency global trade finance, as we mentioned earlier. But the real question is, what about that, Professor Wolf? How much of it really is an indication of China's real financial reforms? As we all know, that is very important in China's overall reform scheme, and that is also very important for the real long term of the RMB exchange rate.
Yeah, so clearly there's a general sense that there's a trajectory of openness and integration coming out of the highest levels of Chinese decision making, and that's fairly consistent. It does take a while to use currencies. I would give the example of the United States would have taken much longer to supplant the pound sterling had the United States not taken advantage of some difficulties encountered by the British financial authorities during World War I. So currencies tend to outlast the empires economically that birthed them, and new currencies have a tendency to take a much longer to grow up than we might expect from a macroeconomic basis. So what we're seeing in the RMB is the right trajectory. It is just a slow process, and perhaps because the Chinese growth story was so explosive and fast, we assumed the currency would follow that pattern, but the RMB is actually following the slow pattern of a rising currency as we've seen it before, which tends to be much slower than some of the other macroeconomic indicators and things that we look at.
Mr. French, speed and impact.
Yeah, so in terms of the speed, I think the transition towards becoming a true global reserve currency, a lot of the responsibility sits with the People Bank of China and their forward guidance. I think that's a very important point in terms of what the policy trajectory is for the the exchange rate targeting regime, with the US dollar, and actually with the much broader basket that they're now targeting now, that'll be key for investors to understand what are the risks associated. And the more forward guidance that can be provided, the greater the share of in global trade that the RMB will be able to capture over time.
Professor Zhao, final question for you. There has been a lot of talk about the capital flight from China, and there has been a lot of talk about the diversity or diversifying the investment opportunities for Chinese companies and individuals overseas. How are they now, with the recent changes tied to the RMB exchange rate fluctuations? What about in the near future, Professor Zhao?
Well, I think in the near future there is still I think it is the allocation of investments. It is the fear about the depreciation. So that's there is the spur the demand for the foreign exchange, and also the outflow of that. And so the problem is those who demand the currency, well, they didn't create the foreign exchange, and that's the in the short term it spurred the demand. So that's the pressure for the depreciations. I think now there is a way to monitor this and to cool down the irrational demand for that. So you have buy the insurance in Hong Kong, then you just fly your wealth to Hong Kong. So that's way has been stopped, and I think back to the normal. You have the normal expectation that there will be the outflow of the investment in the form of the investment that will be slowed down.
I see.
Resist the pressure.
Zhao Zhongxiu, Max Wolf, and Simon French. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. Really appreciate it. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. Rising in the land of smiles with Thai Crown Prince now being the king. What does the succession process mean for the Thai monarchy? Welcome back. You're watching World Insight, coming to you Monday to Friday every day on CCTV News. Now we turn to Thailand, where the nation's parliament has invited Crown Prince to take his late father's place as the king. The royal succession begins more than a month after the death of much-loved King Bhumibol. The prince is expected to accept the invitation in the next few days, but he can only be formally crowned after his father's cremation, which will take place next year. Let's take a look.
A new monarch for a grieving kingdom. Months after the death of the much-loved and revered King Bhumibol Adulyadej, Thailand's National Legislative Assembly has acknowledged Prince Maha Vajiralongkorn as the official heir to the throne of Thailand. He will be known as King Rama X.
We have followed the exact procedure of the monarchy and constitutional law. The National Legislative Assembly has acknowledged that, and they will proceed to invite the Crown Prince to become King Rama X.
Vajiralongkorn succeeds his father, Bhumibol, who died at the age of 88 on October 13 after a long period of illness. Bhumibol played a stabilizing role during decades of often violent political turmoil in Thailand. His death plunged the nation into mourning.
Everything has to move forward. I'm pleased that we'll have a new king, but I will never forget Rama IX.
The person who will take on from King Rama IX has big shoes to fill, but I believe that he will do fine.
64-year-old Vajiralongkorn has been married 3 times and was educated in the United Kingdom and Australia. He served in the military as a pilot and was decorated for combat against insurgents in the 1970s. In 2015, he led thousands of cyclists through the streets of Bangkok in 2 bike rides to honor his parents. A Thai royalty expert believes the new king will carry on much of the work undertaken by his father to modernize the country.
I think it would be something quite similar, but there would be some differences as well, as we have to understand that he's a military kind of a personnel. So I would say we will see him more in ceremonial role.
There will be immense interest in his style of monarchy, in a country where the royal family has huge influence over daily life and is seen as a guiding force in the nation's politics.
For more discussion on Thailand's new king, we are joined in the Beijing studio Ye Hailin, director of the Center for South Asia Studies of the China Institute of International Strategy with Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. In Bangkok, we are having Mr. Zhang Bupakong, a former advisor to the Thai government. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. First of all, to Mr. Bupakong in Thailand, how much do you think the new king will be able to play his role compared to the role that the late king played in terms of the national politics?
I am quite confident that he will do very well indeed, because after the long apprenticeship for at least some 30 years since his appointment as a crown prince in 1972, he has performed a variety of functions on behalf of his father. His main job was to deal with the religious freedom with a good transition in terms of look after the South, and that's the reason why Thailand has a good relationship with the Muslim community inside the country, minus with some insurgent problem which is still ongoing. But overall, the country that he was left with from his father, it was transformed from, let's say, sevenfold in terms of per capita income, and with huge currency reserve, so he could manage to project some type of influence that the Thai monarchy are being loved, and that could be a balancing role for the political underneath that or above, as it's hard to describe, that parliamentary democracy, which Thailand have to have a crucial role, a king as the top.
Mr. Ye here in Beijing. No one is arguing that the new king actually inherited the political legacy the late king has left him with. The question is whether he will be able to carry the same level of political weight as his father did. Of course, his father earned his own credibility through decades.
I think we should take some time to observe what he did when he took the crown and turned to the King Rama X, because the people's major concern on whether he will be the same great as his father, because of the two reasons. Firstly, that the latest king is really great king, and no one can compete with them. So when this king passed away, everybody will concerned and worried. It's natural response. Secondly, there's some rumors or stories on the Western newspaper and the Western mass media may cause some people have some worry about whether this king is some great or not. But we should notice he was the crown prince already for 40 years.
Right.
Mr.
Bupakong already mentioned about that. Are there any new evidence that you would like to share with us that would support that he will have the same level of
this job
importance?
Is the most future has the brightest future, but also the most difficult job, because the people naturally will compare everything he did with his father. So
well, that's only natural, but the thing is, where does his credibility come from? For example, his father, the late king.
We can say that. Firstly, the royal family is enjoyed a high reputation. Not only him, it's the whole family. Secondly, the Thai people is already prepared for this moment or for this change for a very long time, because we know that the latest king is already on the crown for 70 years.
One of the achievements of the late king is that he has been having a very balanced relationship, both with the military and with the government.
Of course.
Two very different branches of the government. So will this new king be able to keep that balance? That's always a very crucial question in Thailand.
But I think he will try to maintain the balance.
What does it take to do a good job in that regard?
And also,
what does it take?
I think currently he is just to take the crown, so we need to time to verify, to observe. But we should notice is the time has changed. Also, the Thai government has also changed. This government is not like the 20 years or 30 years ago. We have the Thai government has some new change and also prepared for this. So-called the amendment to the constitution and the general parade also prepared for this. Make some the measures to stabilize the government and transition in the future. So I think we're not only focusing on the king, we also should focus on the whole politics arena because it already put some of the new factors into that.
How much will those quote-unquote new factors, as indicated by our Chinese guest, Mr. Bu Pakong, likely to help the just to become king in your country?
If I have to say that I could move this question with a little bit more confident from the standpoint that the new king is quite more progressive than everybody expect. He's extraordinarily well read, and I think don't believe in so much of Western media writing. And I thought that because perhaps there are less majesty law that exists in the books, it provoked a lot of discussion, probably mostly are false. But in terms of his relationship with the current military, yes, they will guarantee a stability under this difficulty while the election, which should take place sometime next year, and the junta have more or less said that they will make it happen, pending other factors that I don't prefer not to discuss this for the moment, but I think you know what I mean. And unless that factor happen, then we would have some type of a problem. But I don't really anticipate that. I think Thais appreciate the fair amount of stability, but they also would want to see the election so that it will be accepted internationally. I share some apprehension, but I also am more optimistic than most because from what I know, I think that he is prepared. He's prepared for his reign.
Mr. Bu Pakong, king, as we all know, is very well known for his political smartness and his swiftness, be able to circling around so many different important political factors in your country. Well, the new king, of course, he will have his learning curve, that's for sure. But at the same time, how much can he learn from his father in terms of political smartness and also in terms of exerting enough influence to balance the overall factors within the country?
We are going to have to wait and see that. But as I said previously, he has long apprenticeship under his father. They have been very, very close until his death. And therefore, I think compared to most Thais of different persuasion that I have talked to, they also have some confidence, and I think we could more or less navigate Thailand together with the military and the upcoming government after this transitional government. It would go okay. Thailand is at peace with its neighbors, and pending difficult international circumstances of international election from United States. That's another question. But overall, I don't foresee any type of anxiety that many share.
Okay. Confidence is what people should have when there is a change of important positions within the country. That certainly is a good prospect. However, we have to take a look at some of the real issues going on there. Thailand's economy, for example, has long been affected by its political situation. In the past 10 years, some believe political turmoil weighed down on the country's growth, including anti-government campaigns after former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra was ousted by military coup and the impeachment of his sister, Yingluck Shinawatra. Years later, Thailand's economy remains stagnant, and therefore the question is very relevant. It is the economy stupid, as they always say. So, will this new king coming into the power address some of the most important questions to his constituency, that is the economy?
Through this data, we also could see that for the last about 8 years, there's two factors influence the Thai economy most seriously. One is the global economy, but this Thai people basically has nothing to do because Thailand is not a country who can run the global economy. It's not like the United States, not like China. Second factor is a domestic terminal, but we should notice that one very essential factor is already several years that people get tired. So now I think it's a good news for the Thai government, also the new king. There's the people would like to see some stable system, so that they will try to keep the economy on the rail and keep the politics on the rail. So it's not like a couple of years ago that people suffered a lot and very eager to participate the political demonstration, but now time has changed.
Well, time has changed. People realize stability is important, but that doesn't necessarily mean political figures are likely to come up with smart policies. That's two things. So, Mr. Bukrakong, what do you think?
I see external factors economically could be problematic in the future, pending the larger regional issue, and I think that's outside the control of Thailand for the moment. But in terms of financial system-wise, I think Thailand has enough currency reserve of $100 billion, $180 billion to be able to weather in the medium term should United States cause some type of trade barrier with the Trump administration. But that had nothing to do with really the upcoming monarch. It depends on both the military and the upcoming civilian government.
Right.
So to handle this. But overall, I'm just a little bit optimistic that the transition to the succession is going on smoothly. The royal families are united, and the Thai people want the monarchy to go on. They adore the monarchy. So that at this is a good start.
All right.
And I think the Thai people could solve economic situation together, doing okay. But as a Thai, I'm rather optimistic.
Okay, we hope everybody in your country is like you. Having said that, though, what is the comparison that we can make now between the Thai royal family and its roles in the international, in its domestic politics, and the others, let's just say the UK or Denmark? How are we going to see this role evolving with the coming in of the new king for the future?
We are talking about the role of the royal family basically on two factors. One is the tradition, one is the king's personality. Firstly, the tradition, Thai royal family's tradition is quite different with the Europeans because they're always very influential on the politics, not only for the latest king. Secondly, the personality of the latest king, the Rama IX. But I think in this part, the King Rama X need learn as quick as possible from his father, but still they have time. And after all, if you've been to Thailand, you will see the people respect their royal family pretty much. So I think that means the new king still has a large room to play their very unique, important role compared with the European kings and the royal families. Europeans, basically, the king is only the symbol of the country. But in Thailand, it's quite different.
It's a very different matter. At the very beginning of his throne, the late king, Mr. Bukrakong, was very low-key, and he tried to concentrate on some of the issues concerned to his constituency, for example, about medical issues and health. But later, he thrived politically. Many would wonder, what would the natural process this new king likely to follow, given his own personal advantages and knowledge spheres?
Well, because the Thais, last Rama IX reign, more or less has what I call the last assisted hand to help them in the time of needs. But we are living in a new era now, and I think for this king to see the political divisiveness that still exists, with Chinawatra factor, Mr. Thaksin and Yingluck Rice case, and the possible verdict that could come up. And if he more or less exert let the system work accordingly, Thailand would be okay in my book. But that's something that having a long apprenticeship under his father will come handy for the next, the very, very near future when the situation like this arise. But remember, Thais want to make this work, and they're willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, final question, very briefly, 30 seconds if you can, sir. That is upcoming election. From now till then, very small amount of time for this new king to gather just two. So what's likely he's going to hold on to in order to make sure it could be smooth?
I think for the coming election, we all know we already know the result, because the current government already made a lot of prepare for the coming election. For instance, all the senators will be appointed by the government, and the majority of the parliament has also came from the current government. So it won't be a big change. So that means the king won't necessarily to jump in, play the very unique role.
All right, we'll see how they would play it out. Shangbu Pakong from Thailand for us. Ye Hailin in Beijing. Really appreciate, gentlemen. Thank you for being with us. All the best, of course, to the country of Thailand. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of a program, visit our website. Just type World Insight CCTV News into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. And tune in again tomorrow for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night.